We're going to kick it off right now for a session on reimagining e-commerce experiences for today's customer needs. We have been hearing a lot so far today about things like rising customer acquisition costs, and we're not going to talk about that, but what's important is if you are making this big investment to get people to your site, you want to give them a really great experience, and that's what we're going to dive into. So we have a fantastic panel of folks that have a lot to say, a lot of experience building customer experiences. I'm going to read off who they are. Brian Seewald, who is SVP of e-commerce at Express. We have Dave Hahn, VP of product at Neiman Marcus. Bree Casart, head of digital at Hanna Andersson. Faisal Masud, CEO of Fabric. And then here to moderate the conversation is Cara Salpini, senior editor at Retail Dive, who I'm sure you have been, if you're a subscriber, you've been reading all the great articles she's been talking about and writing about. So please welcome the panel.
All right. Yeah, these are very plushy chairs. I'm like not sure where to go. So as Scott mentioned, I'm Cara Salpini. I'm the senior editor at Retail Dive. And for those of you who don't know Retail Dive, we write retail-related news for industry executives. So that's me. And then I'm just going to have everyone kind of go down the line and introduce themselves briefly. We're talking about reimagining the e-commerce experience. There's a lot to get through, but I want to give them the time to kind of say a little bit about themselves first.
Sure, thanks. I'm Faisal Masud, CEO at Fabric. We're a headless commerce platform. Great to be here. I've spent the last 2 decades working in commerce across Amazon, Google, and was CTO at Staples prior to this.
Bree Casart. I'm head of digital at Hanna Andersson, which, if you're not familiar, in my opinion, sells the best children's clothes in the world.
Hi, I'm Dave Hahn. I'm VP of product at Neiman Marcus Group. A heritage luxury brand, the largest luxury e-commerce platform in the US, helping drive growth in their online business.
And hi, I'm Brian Seewald. I lead the e-commerce team for Express. I'll take a page from Bree and say that if you're not familiar, we sell the best women's and men's clothes in the world. Super excited to be here and get to see some old friends and meet new ones in real life. It's awesome.
Amazing. Okay. So I'm just going to kick it off by sending us back to 2020. Sorry, everybody. But the pandemic kind of accelerated e-commerce in 2020, and there was this huge attention suddenly on the online channel, especially with stores shutting down, and customers really had pretty much only online to go to for a few months. And I'm curious from all of you, what learnings did you take away from that really rapid growth period? And what did your companies choose to prioritize during that time? So Brian, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I actually started Express in January of 2020. So if you're doing that math, that was roughly 6 weeks before we shut down our office and the pandemic started. And actually, our head of UX is here today, and he started the day that we shut our office down. And so there were obviously some unique learnings, especially when you consider that we are a brand that specializes in things to go out in and things to go to the office in. And so for us, that lack of special occasions, that lack of office wear, that was something, and obviously stores shutting down, et cetera. It did, just like for everyone else, accelerate our roadmap. And it made experiences and delivering great experiences to our customers that much more important. And so everything that we were going to do, we were just still testing, if you believe it, we were still testing buy online, pick up in store at the time. So that forced us into, as soon as stores started to reopen, an incredibly fast rollout of buy online, pick up in store, and all of the omni-channel stuff that goes with it. But I think more than that, what we focused on the most was really bringing our customer an incredible styling and fit experience. How can we make sure that the customer understands the versatility of what we're offering? Again, think about who we are and how people thought of us. We want to make sure that they realize they can wear our clothes a million different ways. And so the amplification of user-generated content, of building out community became huge, huge priorities for us and remain so today. Those were the big things. And then the idea of just being able to communicate the details of our clothes and make sure our customers can see what makes them great. Because we've been upping the quality level. We've been using better fabrics. We've been having more detail. And so we have these great sections on our site now where you can see all the details of our clothing. We show multiple models in fit-critical categories. We have an outfitting tool so that you can see a bunch of different ways to wear something, But I'd really hammer away user-generated content, because for us, the idea of a customer being able to see how another customer is wearing something, or an influencer, or what have you, a different way, we've noticed meaningful increases in conversion from that, and we think much higher customer satisfaction.
Yeah, a lot of what Brian mentioned is also, it's interesting to hear because user-generated content, communities, and the ability to provide all these capabilities have existed with pure play retailers for a long time. I mean, Amazon's had it for probably 20 years. And it's great to see now that the rest of retail got accelerated because of not a great event, COVID, but obviously it woke everybody up into you don't only have to shop at stores. So Fabric sort of powers some of these capabilities and allows for retailers like these. And what we saw was different was not just B2C retailers, but also a lot of traditional B2B retailers, distributors who started moving online as well versus having large sales forces supporting their business because you couldn't meet anybody face to face. You actually didn't want to meet anybody face to face. So platforms also saw a pretty big boost in that time period.
Yeah, Bree or Dave, do you want to hop in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I joined Neiman Marcus January of this year, so some of this is kind of the results that we've seen since joining. But I think like many omnichannel retailers, it obviously had a pretty big impact to our store business. It required our teams to really accelerate our digital remote selling platform. We built a proprietary stack called Connect, which enabled our store client advisors to be able to sell even during that period of time during the pandemic when the stores were closed. So I think what really accelerated is our ability to, as a retailer, to think about our consumers and how they're interacting with our brand, and to leverage digital capabilities to allow our workforce, essentially, to be able to connect with our customers regardless of where they are. I think that was a really important development. It essentially changed our selling ecosystem. So it was pretty meaningful.
Yeah. Well, at the start of the pandemic, I was actually not at Hanna Andersson. I was at Nike in their wholesale business. And so at that moment in time, it gave us an opportunity just to rethink how you did the sell-in process and how it would become virtual and all the things that buyers would need in order to do their job virtually and make assortment decisions. But speaking for Hanna, they actually made a tremendous decision at the start of the pandemic to close all the stores and focus on digital only, which was a significant decision and not one that was taken lightly. We're a 40-year heritage brand and started in catalog and stores, and then sort of make that decision and focus exclusively on digital and how you sell to moms and dads buying kids' clothes and matching family pajamas. It really gave us an opportunity to do several things. One, from a team perspective, you're thinking about the consumer, obviously, but if you're going to go digital first and you've been invested in stores and catalog, it gave us an opportunity to think about where we were investing from a team and a dollar perspective. And then alongside that, what investments did we need to make in order to bring that in-store experience, which our customers depended on to touch and feel the product and make those decisions for their children online.
Yeah, I love that answer because that was something that I was going to ask you guys about, which is, the online experience became more important when the pandemic happened. It was always, important. But it seems like also some of the calculus around what to invest in changed a little bit because pre-pandemic it was at least from our perspective really focused on convenience, and people were like, I want free shipping, I want fast shipping, like all of these kind of convenience factors. And then once you have stores that are closed, it becomes so much more important because it also becomes a channel that you want to be like super engaging, like kind of fun for the shopper in the way that going to a store is fun. So I'm curious how you all think through what customers want most out of the online experience now and how you choose where to invest. So Bree, I might start back off with you since you finished us off.
Well, yes, where do you invest? Do you invest in the practical convenience nature of how to help the customer find the product they want to buy as quickly as possible versus balance that maybe the in-store fun and whimsy, especially in children's apparel. You want to insert a little bit of whimsy. For us, we've been focused on delivering on the basics because, as I had said, we were stores, we were catalog, and we had a digital business, but we had an opportunity, I think, to get some of the basics right, and we still do. I think everyone does. So things like one of the wonderful things about the stores was the in-store engagement with the store associate who could help you find the right size, consider your different options if you were in the matching family space. So we took some of our best store associates and partnered up with Hero to do online chat to help customers, clienteling really online, and had tremendous success with that. In addition to taking some more practical tools to help consumers build out both from an outfitting perspective, but also how do you find, if you're outfitting a family of, say, 8 in matching family pajamas, going through that online is a much more complex experience than you would in store.
Yeah.
In store, you just work with a store associate and say, I need these sizes, and it would be done. So how can we replicate that online?
Yeah, and Brian and Dave, I'm curious for your guys' perspectives, since obviously you are such like legacy brands and you operate out of stores, and that's just like part of your DNA. So I'm curious how you guys tackled it.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things, as e-commerce professionals, I think every one of us in this room has struggled with the idea of, ooh, this really cool thing Amazon did, or I saw these people did this, or oh my God, the metaverse, and like all of the different things that you could be doing, or the shiny penny things. We have a brand purpose, and that is that we create confidence and we inspire self-expression. I've been doing the retail thing I just did the math, and it's like 28 years. And I don't think I've ever had a brand purpose that's as clear as what we have now. And so for us, we try to make sure, I say try because no one's perfect, but we try to make sure everything ladders up to that idea of creating confidence and allowing our customers to express themselves. So you've got this idea of community, which we're all in on. And I always say, like, if every retailer threw all their strategies in the middle of the room, I'd go back and pick community back out for us because it feels so right for our customer. And so that gets at the ideas of using our customers' content, co-collaborating with our customers, or co-creating lines. How we created this community called Style Editors, who not only are a part of our brand, but can also help sell our brand. And those things, I think, are just perfect for our brand purpose. And as long as we stick to that and try to stay laser focused on that, I think we'll at least choose the right things to do for our customers specifically.
Yeah, I'll build on that. I think, yeah, I mean, a mix of sort of strategic sort of initiatives and adherence to brand values. I think it's an important thing to balance. I think for us at Neiman Marcus, we believe in integrated luxury retail. We believe that relationships are at the core of our business, making luxury accessible, but as Bree mentioned, doing the brilliant sort of basics, as we call it. It's really, really important, especially for a company that hasn't been as digitally forward. I think there's a lot we can do to improve the e-commerce experience. I think the constant battle, being at sort of wearing a pragmatic hat, is we look at data and our conversion funnels and identify gaps where we need to address. We glean customer insights based on how they're actually behaving. But we definitely have to keep an eye on market trends out there, whether it's metaverse or NFTs or Bored Apes or whatever. Like, I think it's an important part for us to understand how customers are interacting with our brand. But we really try to keep our sort of ethos and brand sort of values at the heart. We believe that it's all about relationships at the core. And so we really invested in not only using consumer insights and gleaning market research, but listening to our sales associates, our client advisors, from stores, because they have the books of business, they have the relationships. And so I think getting that integrated, the platform that we described, being able to sort of put a digital lens to it and getting empirical data about how customers are interacting with our products has been a really important insight into how we drive customer experience.
Yeah, and Faisal, you come at this from a totally different perspective, but I'm curious from your view, what are some of those tools and capabilities that you're seeing retailers really invest in, and like what do retailers really need to be powering that experience?
Yeah, I think there's a huge reliance on just generally merchants and planners and human beings to do a lot of these tasks. inside of a lot of retail organizations, and where what hasn't changed is building autonomy across all these tasks of what David and Brian mentioned, and also what Bree mentioned about going through the data, the insights, and making decisions. I think where Fabric aspires to be is we've built a front-end tool for the operators, the marketer, and the merchant to be able to build autonomy into those tasks, so you don't have to go change the price. I mean, Amazon, you change prices every 6 minutes, but it's not done by a human. It's 100% of those prices are done automatically, and that happened, a decade and a half ago. So what Fabric wants to do, and I think what headless platforms provide, is that capability of being able to think about what your consumer needs and not having lots of human beings involved in the process, but actually letting the data and the insights make decisions on your behalf. An example of this would be at Staples, we had 300 merchants running a $3 billion online business. And when we built our office supplies business at Amazon, we had 3 merchants. We didn't have 300 because the 3 did enough work for 300, same size business. So I think that's where legacy retail has to think about how to utilize modern technology to accelerate their path forward, because human beings just don't scale that way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it wouldn't be 2022 without a question about the metaverse. So we're going to pivot and talk about that for a second. But really, I'm just curious. I mean, obviously the metaverse is kind of coming to the front as this new opportunity for retailers to engage with shoppers, but everything is just kind of unclear, uncertain right now. It's not clear what kind of a role exactly the metaverse is going to play. Some people are jumping in head first, others are a little more skeptical about it. So I'm just curious if you each could talk through a little bit of just how you're thinking about the metaverse right now, and also how do you think through the approach that your company should have, because it might not necessarily be for everyone. So Dave, I don't know if you want to kick us off with that one.
I start this one. I think it's a difficult one. I think we're sort of realistic about our position in the marketplace. We're not bleeding edge technology, but I think if you've sort of seen the news out there, many luxury brands are sort of laying identifying areas to sort of build consumer trust. And so we're taking a cautious approach. We don't have a solid strategy yet. If you guys have some insights, I'd love to glean them. But I think it's one of those things where we are being sort of pragmatic and taking a portfolio approach about how much we invest in the metaverse and NFT developments out there.
I'm so glad that you answered that one first. So I think we're very similar. I make light of it, and I did in the last answer, but for us, it's just a wait and see approach. We want to wait until it's the right thing for our customer. I think for some customers, it might be the right thing right now, depending on demographic, et cetera, what they're interested in. For our customer, right now, the interest level's not there. And so we're going to stay very, very close to it. And when the time is right, I think we'll be there. I think it's the same thing, though. It is, we've got higher priorities. I mean, we still have opportunities to nail some of the basics, like what Bree was saying. I think there are more important things, just kind of falling back on the whole brand purpose thing around creating confidence. There are things that we can do that will do that better than the metaverse for our customer now. So we're going to focus on those things for now, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to stay close to it.
I mean, it's a lot like your product development roadmap, right? You can't do it all at once. You got to prioritize where the return on investment is going to realize the level of effort. And to Brian's point, if you're still focused on the basics and you have a lean team, probably don't need to also be exploring the metaverse. But if, for example, you're Nike and you have 10,000 people at your headquarters and the capacity to take on the metaverse, absolutely. Why wouldn't you be ready for that wave should it come? But I think it just comes down to your priorities and where you can focus.
For sure. Faisal, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, we're a commerce platform, so we're driven by APIs. If there's commerce, Fabric will power it. My only concern with metaverse would be, from a retailer and brand perspective, transactionally it's so small. It's sort of a rounding error today that That's why it doesn't hit the priority list that Brian and Bree just talked about. The other is, Web3 is a bit opaque that way. Not everybody fully understands what's going on with Web3, and graduating from 1 to 2, going on to 3, it's a more value-driven system and platform and protocol versus traditional, where you went from Web 1, which was content, Web 2, which was transactional commerce, and now 3, where privacy is very important. I think we're far away from arriving at a position, a point of view from retail perspective, but from Fabric's perspective, we're an API-first company. We can help power whatever is needed from a transaction perspective.
Could we do a little bit of a survey? I'm curious. Could we get like a show of hands around the number of people in the room who believe that their company should invest in the metaverse right now? I'm just curious, because you see a lot of talk, but okay. All right.
Few people, few brave people.
I think the concepts are so interesting. Like, I think for me, I think we were talking about this previously. For me, when it sort of dawned on me where the world is headed is, I have kids. During the pandemic, they were playing a lot of Fortnite. And I happened to watch them as they were playing, and there was a Travis Scott concert going on. I don't know if you've heard about it. That's when it dawned on me that like this is a reality for them. And I think as consumer sentiment changes, it's definitely going to resonate with the population. I think the really interesting idea is for us in luxury, the chain of ownership, authenticity, being able to use the blockchain to verify ownership. I think all of those things are really super interesting. As marketplaces expand, as different sort of landscapes emerge, I think it's definitely something for us to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think there's also still a question around just like what age groups are interested in the metaverse, and like what are what are the demographics that are using it? Because that obviously impacts what type of retailers are going to be interested in hopping in there, and like how successful that engagement is. So it's all very early stages still, for sure.
Yeah, if there's any indication, Roblox is a more centralized version of that metaverse that's been around a very long time. Mm-hmm. And it can demonstrate what it could look like if it was not as centralized. But it's not a trivial task to do that. And also the folks utilizing it, back to David's point, are the younger generation. The dollars have to come from their parents. So until the parents fully understand what's going on, it's going to be harder for it to have the adoption curve. But I do agree that you can't just take your eyes off of it.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually been thinking about that last point a lot. I'm like, whose parents are like, you know what? Yeah, sure. Here's the cash for this product. I wanted to pivot a little bit. I know we've been talking a lot about digital, which makes a lot of sense on this panel, but I did want to bring in stores a little bit. Obviously a big part of the retail experience nowadays is kind of connecting your stores and your e-commerce platform and making that experience feel really seamless for the customer. I'm curious, Dave and Brian might be particularly applicable to you guys, but I'm curious what your approach is to making stores and e-commerce feel connected, and what role does data play in how you do that?
Yeah, well, I'll kick it off. I think, even though we're in luxury, sales and promotions are still a really important part. So I think, trying to maintain consistency in customer experience through our promotional strategy, I think has been a big part of it. I'll keep talking about this Connect platform. I think it was sort of a big game changer for us when we enabled mechanisms that allow our client advisors to send text messages that then get tracked like emails and how we sort of monitor performance marketing. I think that brought a level of sophistication to the way we're thinking about consumer demand. And then I'm sure many of us are working on personalization efforts. We've invested pretty heavily in creating a repository of customer data, centralizing POS sales data with online clickstream data, and being able to not only sort of draw inferences, but really elicit customer preferences through the experiences that we light up for customers, whether it's in store or online. So I think it's, to the luxury sort of as a relationship point, we're trying to make it so that we interact with customers on a one-to-one basis. We can identify and be able to cater to customer needs regardless of channel, store, online, or remote selling through our client advisors.
Yeah, so I'll take a slightly different path, although I agree with everything that Dave said. I think for us, the key is mobile experiences and how we're leveraging mobile, both in our associates' hands and in our customers' hands. One thing that has become apparent to me as our stores have reopened and become an important part of our business again is that our customers have a much better mobile tool to shop Express than what our associates have. It's almost sort of an uneven playing field. They walk into a store, they can scan a barcode, they can look at ratings and reviews, they can see other people wearing the product, they can look at 3 different models, they can do all of these things, but our associates can't do those things yet. And so I think in order to make it feel like a really seamless experience, we have to get there and give our associates better mobile capabilities. At the end of the day, I think you said it, Cara, shopping should be fun. And stores are always going to be, it's an inherently social experience. Stores are going to be important, so it's really important that we do that. Now that said, we still have this $1 billion goal in terms of e-commerce, which we've been very public about, and my dad listens to all of our earnings calls and always calls me right after and asks me how we're doing. And I think we just have to make sure that now that we're seeing stores be so relevant again that we're sort of pulling these 2 channels along together.
For sure. Bree or Faisal, any takeaways on that?
Yeah, anything to do with sort of the multi-channel part of using stores is that there is a bit of a misconception on, you hear a lot about Walmart is going to use all their stores to fulfill, and it's going to be the juggernaut that can compete with other pure play. It's slightly misguided because to pick and pack and ship from a store is not quite the same unit economics that you have from a fulfillment center, especially if you have robots picking and packing. I think there's a bigger advantage to the points that David and Brian made, which is that experience inside the store and then being able to fulfill. One thing that we did in the past, and we work with a lot of our customers on order management, we have a product that allows optimizing your last mile costs to the customer, whether it's coming from the store, a dark warehouse, your actual fulfillment center. The data that you need to manage real-time inventory, to be able to dispense that inventory from the right place and not have splits and long zones, those types of capabilities are so important for retailers today that I don't think a lot of retailers have that. The experience part is great, but what about the last? What if it's not in that store? What do you do then? Are you paying too much to get it to the customer if they actually end up buying it? I think those decisions are more back end, but that back end is just as important as the front end.
For sure.
Perhaps not an astute observation, but I think listening to these 3 gentlemen up here, the thought I'm having is, and I've had this thought for a while around e-commerce, that our job is not to bring digital into the stores, but to bring the store experience online and replicate kind of what the consumer loved about going into stores online. But as we talk about the reopening of stores, and we hope to do that at some point again with Hanna, like how do you take the convenience of online shopping and bring that into the stores? That you're limiting your friction points, whether it's from a fulfillment perspective or otherwise.
Yeah. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, so I thought we could do just kind of one last question to have each of you answer down the line. But I'm curious, we've talked about a lot of different parts of the online experience. There are tons of different areas to invest, tons of things to iterate on. So for each of you, I'm just curious, what is kind of one key focus area for your company going forward? And I know that that's hard because I know there are a lot of them. But if there's one kind of big focus area, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I can take it if it's okay.
Down the line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can. So the reason we started Fabric was because when I was at Staples, I was there for 5 years, we had to do a giant monolithic transformation over to microservices and a platform that looked and felt a lot more modern. And we always felt that, why isn't everybody else doing this? Because you just can't compete with the larger pure plays if you don't have that flexibility on the front end and back end. So I would say for us, it's really providing the capabilities that you just mentioned in all experiences via the technology that we can power versus the retailer becoming a technology company to do that. And what we see a lot is a lot of retailers are investing in thousands of engineers to build a platform. It's like saying if Fabric, a technology platform, started building T-shirts because T-shirts were selling well on the platform. it's sort of backwards, and it's a forced function on retailers to go build this technology because it just doesn't exist. So we exist to help advance that capability for retailers so they're not building technology that's not their moat.
For sure.
Oof. Outside of the beautiful basics, or maybe it is the beautiful basics, I think it just comes down to, again, what I've been talking about is how do you replicate that in-store experience online, but more specifically, when you touch our clothes. If you have a child out there, I would highly encourage you to go buy a piece of Hanna Andersson clothing. Seriously, like best in class quality. You don't get that online. So how do we get as close to it as possible?
Right.
Haven't figured it out yet, but I think that is the holy grail.
I was gonna say, I think that would help a lot of people if you could
Yeah.
figure that out and just call us up when you do.
Scratch and sniff, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, I think this is a pretty. It's hard for us to hard for me to identify one thing. We're making such big investments in supply chain, our logistics network. We're building out distribution centers to fulfill according to customer needs. We've invested tons in data and technology to create kind of a platform for us to be able to connect with customers. I think at the end of the day, I think the sort of perfect anecdote is if you go to the Bergdorf Goodman store up the street here, I think there's something about a human personal experience in shopping that we think we have the opportunity to bring to the fore for customers. I think in a world of really sort of anonymous sort of e-commerce, we're really focused on bringing the human aspect to the fore. Like if you go to the BG store, it operates like I describe it as like a small business. But to be able to bring scale to a small business and to really personalize it for individuals, I think that's sort of in a nutshell what we're focused on.
Yeah, and mine will really be a twist on that. It's really, we're trying to, rebuild a 40-year-old brand, and we have a passionate community out there, and how we bring that together digitally. What is the best digital manifestation of that? How do you really get that across online? That's the idea that we're in love with, what we're going after, and hopefully you'll see some exciting things from us in that regard.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.